How many of us have gone down the rabbit hole? Well, today we have a guest that actually has a podcast called The Edge of the Rabbit Hole. Mike Ricksecker, author, researcher, filmmaker, has been on Truth Be Told before. He's written many books, but today we're going to talk about his latest, Travels Through Time. We'll examine the nature of time, dimensions, and possibilities of real-time travel. Which brings the question is, are UFOs, aliens, extraterrestrials, UAPs, are they our future self? Are we just traveling back in time to what we're doing to the planet now? And we're going to talk about what clues did our ancient ancestors leave for us about the nature of the universe. Lots to discuss today on Truth Be Told. I'm Tony Sweet with Truth Be Told. Please welcome back to the Truth Be Told studios, the one and only author, researcher, Mike Ricksecker.
This is Truth Be Told.
That not only are there reptilians here,
new evidence of UFO fleets.
We were close to nuclear war.
To help you transform so that you can live your highest truth.
We're not being told just because we're not ready for it.
Geostations of frequency, vibrational.
I was a homicide detective with LAPD.
UFOs increase. Visitations.
This is...
There he is. Mike Ricksecker is back in the house.
Hey, thanks for having me back, Tony. I really appreciate it. I always enjoy your show.
Oh, thank you so much. And yours too. Congratulations. I think many of us that have been doing this for a long time. And, I've been doing podcasting a long time, about 15 years, but you've been putting a lot of books out there that really have made an impact in our community. And so I'm excited today to talk about your latest book, Travels Through Time. So let's go ahead and get started on asking, when you research a lot of your subjects for writing books, what attracted you to this subject and the title, Travels Through Time?
Yeah, this subject has always fascinated me, the idea of time travel. And, quite honestly, it goes all the way back to when I was a kid, and I fell in love with the movie Somewhere in Time, starring Christopher Reeve and Jane Seymour. And, that notion of the idea of being able to will your consciousness back in time always fascinated me. So as I started down this road of researching supernatural and esoteric topics, this is something that I always came back to. And, as I kind of developed my different theories and ideas, I'm a writer, so I started writing things down, creating the different podcasts and classes, and realized that, okay, I have enough material here to put into a book. And at first, the book was Connecting the Universe, which covered a lot of different topics, and time was going to be a piece of that. But when I was out in Egypt this past February, the notion hit me, because I was going to also include within the book Stargates of Ancient Egypt, which is our tour. It occurred to me that, no, Connecting the Universe is actually an entire series of books, not just one book.
Right.
And I decided to start with time travel because it really gives us, and not just time travel itself, but the nature of time and the nature that our universe and the various dimensions work is really a great base to start from with this series.
And, when we talk about time, humans, our time on this planet are so like a blip in the time that the existence of this universe, has been here. When we start talking about time travel and I think it confuses a lot of people. I mean, there has been TV shows about it and movies about it. You see even Marvel, going through these time warps and time traveling and a lot of people just don't quite understand it. When you say time travel, what does that mean to you, and what in your research, what is time travel? Because is that just going in time back and forth, or it can mean a lot of things.
It can, and there are ways in which we already experience a type of time travel in some different ways. Like somebody who has a premonitory dream, that they get a glimpse of the future, and
Right.
they find themselves in a room or a location that they had just previously had a dream about. The situation's exactly the same, etc. That in and of itself is a type of time travel where, while the person was sleeping, and you go through various brainwave states, that while they were unconscious, their consciousness in that brainwave state was able to move to another point in time and observe something and bring that back with them. So we already experienced this in some ways. But when we talk about time, time really doesn't exist. It's a human construct that we've created to describe our reality, to help.
Right.
It's a tool, that we use to help keep track of things like when to plant the crops, keep track of the
Right.
seasons, get to work at the right moment, that sort of thing. So this is a tool. But when we look at various dimensions, first dimension being a line, second, a plane, like a piece of paper or a flat surface, you have 3D objects. The fourth is actually time. This is where our consciousness resides at. And what's really interesting is our consciousness being in the fourth dimension of time. It's housed within a three-dimensional object, a body. So we're already, just from there, multidimensional beings, which is fascinating. But what I've come to understand and learn, and really it's a thought that occurred to me a couple of decades ago, was that all time, past, present, future, is all concurrent. It is all here presently with us. We're just, because of the rules that the universe has set up, we're stuck in what we call the river of time. But it's all here. It's fascinating that Albert Einstein, one of his last quotes in 1955, just before he died, was that he had stated that all time, past, present, and future, is just a stubborn illusion, which is fascinating that a guy like Einstein came up with this, but it makes sense because in his research, and as I started doing my own, stumbled across his work, of course, in his ideas of the space-time continuum, he had what he called the block universe, which is essentially the same thing. All time is ever present, past, present, and future. Where I kind of start to take that a bit further, however, is the ability to be able to move up and down that stack. So we as humans, we each have our own personal resonance, frequency, and vibration. The human resonance is anywhere between about 9 to 16 hertz. And then, of course, our environment has its own frequency, resonance, vibration as well. And so there are moments within that stack that a couple of, well, we could say photos. I always relate it to a stack of photos. Each moment is a photo within the stack. That two of those moments will resonate for a brief moment at the same frequency, and we'll get a glimpse of the other. So sometimes some of these different ghosts, apparitions, things like this, even doppelganger sightings, are actually what we would call a time slip, that we are actually seeing another moment in time play out.
Is that kind of like the Mandela effect? You know how?
So,
because that,
yeah.
I mean, when people talk about the Mandela effect, there is kind of a almost like a deja vu-ish, but it's of something that you thought happened. Could you explain that? Is there a connection between the Mandela effect?
There is. So the Mandela effect, which was named after Nelson Mandela,
Right.
Fiona Broome is the one that coined the term. When he passed away some years back now, there are a number of people all across the world that believed he had already died way back in the 80s when he was in prison.
Right.
But actually he didn't. And so, yeah, there's this idea out there that things in the timeline have been changed. And some of them are nice, fun pop culture references, like the spelling of Oscar Mayer, or Fruit Loops, or did rich Uncle Pennybags from Monopoly, did he have a monocle or not?
Right, right.
And some people will excuse that as well. A lot of people misremembering or crossing things over, like Mr. Peanut and Mr. Pennybags, or they kind of meshing those two memories together, that sort of thing. But there are other things that pop up which seemingly are, they're not as, such a reference in pop culture that a lot of people could certainly misremember. There are other more obscure things that people encounter that in others, again across the world, remember it the same as they. And I actually have in my book a small section on the Mandela effect, and one of my personal encounters that you won't find in any of those internet lists of like top 50 Mandela effects. It's very different. So this is really a result of some of these interactions between different points in time, or even actual time travelers that have come back. And not to say they came back to change the spelling of Oscar Mayer or something like that, but something was changed somewhere along the way that altered the timeline. And as a result, kind of almost like the butterfly effect,
right.
these other results permeated through.
I think about this when a lot of times when people that get dementia or Alzheimer's, even though we see them in a current time, like my grandfather, he reverted back to when he was a child, a kid, and in his mind, he was reliving those moments. So it's almost like it's a time slip of the mind when it comes to dementia and also Alzheimer's, because a lot of times people they revert back to when they're a childhood. They can remember everything what they did as a child, but they can't remember anything of what they've done recently. Is that would be almost considered a time slip?
It could be, and that's a tough topic to
it is, but
because my grandmother also suffered dementia, and there were times that she was like talking with my grandfather and things like this, which some people in the family were saying, well, no, that's just the dementia kicking in. And while others were like, no, he's visiting.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of people interacted with him during that time. But then, yes, other things where she would, look at, an old photo album and she would remember him younger, but not older. And then looking at, her kids, she doesn't know who they are. So, but yes, could remember things very, very distinctly from a previous point in time. So it's almost as if during that state, because they are, their body chemistry is changing. The body is, of course, at this point, preparing for other things. And so, during that time, the body chemistry is changing, the resonance and frequency of the body and brain is changing. So very well could be it is tuning into, accidentally, none of that would be on purpose with somebody with dementia, but accidentally tuning into another point in time and almost kind of reliving that. If you think about, here's a good example. Two things come to mind. The Lost episode flashes before my mind or before my eyes, where Desmond is jumping in and out of different points in time. Or Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse 5, where he's jumping around between all kinds of different points in time. It's almost kind of like that, where tuning into different moments.
I love that. Because when I think about how Hollywood even depicts time travel, Loki, the series, Back to the Future, every time that he would go back to the future, Professor Doc would say, now don't do this and alter time, because
of course he would.
Yeah, of course, when you're a young teenager you would do that, but how do you feel when I said in the intro about how what we see as aliens, UFOs now, and then recently the hearings even talked about interdimensional travel. What do you feel about, are they aliens, or are they our future selves coming back to kind of use us as our own experiment?
Yeah, I love that Mr. Grush brought up the idea of interdimensional travel. That was wonderful.
Right.
It is right in front of, right in the middle of a congressional hearing. We're going there.
Right,
Fantastic.
right. I loved it.
Yeah, so did I. It was wonderful. That is, that's absolutely on the table. That, certainly there are other dimensions around this, even our theoretical, physics say there's up to 11 dimensions. And many of these are beyond us. Again, we're in the fourth dimension. Anything that is higher than us, we have no concept of.
Right.
Somebody living within those dimensions, and there would be beings living within those dimensions, can see us, all of us, because time is a dimension. They would be able to see all time and be able to pick and choose where to go, come into our realm. And so the idea that some of these extraterrestrials are interdimensional beings. They could be interdimensional time travelers, right? Because they're coming from another dimension that's outside of time. They would be an interdimensional time traveler.
Right.
And, could very well, of course, be coming from some other planet somewhere else in the cosmos, this sort of thing. And, I've heard people before in the past suggest that these UFOs, UAPs that we're seeing, they are not extraterrestrial from another planet. They are us from another
I've heard
time.
that too.
And which is a fine idea. It's perfectly plausible that a human civilization somewhere in the future has developed time travels, coming back to, they could be watching, observing history. There might be a resource here they no longer have that they need to acquire here, that sort of thing. I also put on the table in the book a couple of other ideas regarding that sure, could be somebody from Earth traveling through time, and that's what we're seeing here. But that other being from Earth could be still an extraterrestrial, perhaps far in the future. Humanity has, maybe we've moved on from Earth, maybe we've wiped ourselves out, whatever. But an extraterrestrial civilization has come to Earth, colonized it, developed time travel technology, and decided to research and go back into the planet's history to discover what happened. And that's what we're seeing. So it could be, sure, some creature indigenous to Earth, but came from another planet to begin with. So there's a lot of different ways we could go with this.
It would make sense that people say, well, why don't they just let themselves be known? Why don't they land and just say, we're here? And I think now it's like, well, maybe because they don't want to do a time slip, they don't want to change the timeline. Because if they do land and say, I'm from your future self, and if I tell you to get rid of Hitler or get rid of something that would change the world's history, may take us in a different direction. People may think it was a good decision, but maybe it would make it worse. So, maybe that's one of the reasons they don't come down and just say, don't do this, don't do that.
Absolutely. We don't know the repercussions that would, the fallout from all of that should a major event be changed. And I was asked the other day about, and it was an interesting question, if you could change, one thing, Pearl Harbor, JFK being assassinated, or 9/11, which would you choose if you go back and alter time? And that's a really tough question.
That's a tough one.
It really is, because just at the outset, if you change Pearl Harbor, you're changing the other two immediately.
Right.
And it's a tough notion, a tough idea to kind of settle with. But Winston Churchill, when he had heard about the attacks on Pearl Harbor, for one, he was extremely sad for the American people and all the lives that were lost. But on the flip side of it, he's like, I feel bad saying this, but I was able to rest a little bit better at night knowing that with the Americans now in the war,
right,
we would eventually have victory.
Right.
And that's tough to grapple with. Yeah, he's on one hand sad for the loss of the lives, but on the other hand, he's happy we're now in the war because it will eventually prevent the regime of German Axis powers of taking over. So yeah, and those are really tough questions to try to grapple with.
For our younger audience, I'll put it this way: they may not be interested in what the World War II and Hitler and all this stuff what could have done. Like I said, I will bring in the Marvel movie, the Endgame, when Tony Stark, Iron Man, And Dr. Strange, when he said, there's one way for us to win, but if I tell you, it may not happen. And so Tony Stark at the end had to sacrifice himself to win. Where now he had a daughter and a wife, and so that was a big decision he had to make. So, if he wouldn't have taken that sacrifice, Thanos would have won. So for the younger generation, that's what we're talking about. Sometimes you have to sacrifice for humanity or to change the world in a positive way. So, that's an interesting, like I said, choice to have to make, to go back in time and say, what if I had one thing to change, what would I do? And so, that's a big decision.
A lot of weight and responsibility on those, for sure.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that also talk about simulation, how we might be in a matrix. Can you talk about, and I know you talk about this in your book about the nature of the universe as a simulation. That's pretty interesting because, again, Hollywood has already brought it to the table many years ago. So, how does time fit into a simulation?
Time and what we call time, it's basically built into the simulation. There's rules and parameters that are built within that, and sometimes those rules can be bent or broken, right? Which is when when we actually see a time slip or experience something from the future, that's when those rules are being bent and broken. But with the simulation, you can even go back into our ancient texts and find references. They don't use the word simulation, but they're describing essentially what is a simulation. You look at Eastern philosophy, like the idea of reincarnation, and basically what we're talking about here is we come from somewhere. We come down here to Earth. We live out a life. We learn some lessons. When we pass away, we go back up. And then we do it all over again. So that's essentially like, logging in and out of a simulation. Could be a video game, could be a flight simulator, what have you. But, we log in, we learn some stuff, play around a little bit, experience the simulation, and then we log back out. Even Christianity, even though they don't really talk about reincarnation, although there are some that will say, the older texts that were removed do reference reincarnation. But still, what's traditionally there, talks about that we come down to this world and we are preparing for another world beyond. So this is, in our ancient text, the idea of the simulation. And so, I don't necessarily believe that it's a computer simulation like out of the Matrix. That's our current reference. That's our current frame of mind, because that is our most modern technology.
Right.
But when you look at the evolution of technology, Nikola Tesla, over 100 years ago, was talking about drones, was talking about artificial intelligence. They called them automatons back then, and he conceived the idea of putting his own thoughts and responses into an automaton of himself. So basically, we're talking AI, robot sort of thing here, right? But back then, he's talking, mechanical gears and wheels and using radio waves, right? Well, technology changed over the time, and now we have the silicon microchip. And he didn't conceive that part of it, of how it would be carried out, but the idea was there. And so I think today, we have developed our own simulations. We've talked about the idea of a simulated universe, but I think the actual technology that is back behind it is far beyond what we've come up with today as far as computers or even quantum computers. I think it's actually going to be something, when we discover this, something that's more molecular or biological in nature. And this is long-winded. You want to know how this relates?
No,
to
it's
time.
great. It's great.
The time component of it is, when we're talking about removing ourselves from the simulation, we're essentially talking about moving on to another dimension. That wherever that is, whether it's a fifth, sixth, seventh, whatever dimension that is that it's being run from, is beyond time. So whoever's there running the simulation would be able to see time as a physical object.
Wow.
And what's also fascinating about that is, the rules. I mentioned rules before. Within our simulation, it could be bent, broken, all that stuff. They're going to be different there on that plane of existence than here. I mean, again, think of a game or what have you. When you're, on your console or on your computer or whatever playing around, the rules within that simulated environment are different than our real world. So, we don't go around in our real world, jumping around, hitting bricks and, watching a mushroom pop out. Jump on the mushroom, you get bigger, right? That doesn't really happen. Although there are some elements that we're familiar with, like you can run, you can jump, but there are other elements that are different. So, whatever is beyond whatever's running the simulation, that world is going to, even though some parts will be familiar, is different than here, and that includes time.
That would make sense for reincarnation, because time would never really matter. Like you said, time really wouldn't exist if you could just... I remember having a psychic reading with Sylvia Brown, which, one of the top psychics that's ever lived. And she said, I have been here hundreds of times, and so that would make sense. That would make sense that it is kind of like a game one and different levels, and some people do remember their past lives, which is I think is interesting, being able to take that timeline of that level and bring it over to the next one, which would be great. I wish we could do that with every time we are on this planet, of learning the knowledge that we learned before. So that would be interesting.
And it does make you wonder about, with reincarnation, if that world, outside here that we're coming in to hear from, if they're outside of the parameters of what we call time, do they or we get to choose then which time frame we experience? So right now we're in the 2020s, but I was born in 74.
Right.
So do you choose, like, okay, well, I was, born in the 70s last time. I'm going to go back to the 1770s next time.
Right.
Or maybe I'm going to jump to the 2170s.
Right.
So when we have these, because people do get glimpses of past lives, and some of these glimpses that people get under hypnotic regressions, they are able to tap into all kinds of different worlds, which are absolutely fascinating. So are some of these glimpses that we have of past lives, or premonitions of the future, are they coming from lives that in our traditional timeline have not yet been lived? But
that's what I was going to ask. If there's time travel, and let's say we can travel in the future, so does that mean that particular timeline is already existing, and we just we just don't know it yet? But does that, because we've already, in our lifetime, we've already lived. I'll be 54 this year. So 54 years I've already lived, but hopefully I have another at least 40. Does that mean, that 30 years from now is already existing in these timelines?
Yeah, I like how we both just dated ourselves.
I know. Well, you said it. I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah,
but we look damn good. That's all that matters. I'm just kidding.
We do. Yeah, absolutely. And, there is the idea of the future influencing the present, or future even influencing the past. And I actually just had this happen here over the past year that got me thinking. I should say got us thinking, because it happened with my fiancée Jennifer and I. And, years ago, we've known each other since first grade. And one of our first interactions, we're in the library, our class is down there, and I'm looking through the stack of books. And Jennifer and I hadn't had much interaction before that, but all of a sudden, she just plants a kiss on my cheek in the middle of the library. Like, whoa, what the heck happened here? And it's not like we started dating immediately and been together ever since. We had life.
Right.
Many years later, we finally got together. But over that time, I'd asked her a couple times, like, what in the world, compelled you to, kiss me on the cheek in the library? And she's like, I really don't know. You had this chubby little cheek just sitting out there, and something told me, to kiss your cheek. Okay. So last year, we just got together on a trip to Ireland. I was running a tour to Ireland. She came on the trip, and we just connected, hit it off.
Oh, that's great.
Been together ever since. So last fall, or maybe it was around August. It might have been right around a year ago. We went back to our old hometown. Her parents still live there, so we visited her parents, and then we're touring the town, and went back to our old elementary school, which is now a performing arts center for the college. So some things are different. We're walking around the grounds, peeking in windows, that sort of thing. We go over to the library, and we're looking in the window there and kind of reminiscing. Oh, there's our spot. The whole room is different now. They've set it up for music. Oh, there's our spot. And then all of a sudden, Jen calls through the window. She's like, kiss him, kiss him. It's really
You're
cute.
like, what?
I'm kind of laughing and going, yeah. But then later on, we're thinking, wait a minute. Because she said that, she wasn't sure what it was, but something had told her to kiss me. So was it her 48-year-old self calling through time from 2022 back to first grade, 1980, 1981, whenever that was. And, she heard herself reverberating through time and boom, planted one on my cheek.
Wow.
So it's really interesting to kind of think about. And really, it almost becomes like its own bootstrap paradox, where you have something that, doesn't have an origin. And, I mentioned Somewhere in Time earlier, and that's the one with the pocket watch, where she hands him the pocket watch as an old woman to him when he's in college, and then later on, after he travels back in time, and they're both, he's a grown man now, and she's younger. He hands it to her, and she ends up with it when he disappears, and it just is a constant circle again and again with no point of origin. So it's almost like, did that just happen with this kiss?
I love it. I love that, and I love stories, and I love good examples, and that's a great one, because we've all had that happen in some form or other. I don't know if have you ever heard of Dolores Cannon?
Oh yeah. I've read several of her books. Yes.
I remember, hearing a lot on social media and TikToks and about her talking about how the entire Earth is moving into a new dimension. That in a way that's moving us to a different time. Do you think, is that going into a different timeline or just progressing on the same timeline? Do you think her prediction or her speaking on this kind of taps on time travel?
Yeah, well, and certainly, like when she's done the regressions, that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier. I was exactly thinking
near death and past lives,
with the past lives, and people seeing lives from other worlds and other timelines and what have you. In a way, it's just when we talk about the universe, there's definitely a physicality to the universe itself, and even our theoretical physics, they math this out. We don't have a telescope that can see it.
Right.
But basically, the math tells us that we are just one physical universe that's here. There are other physical universes that are out there, and we just happen to, kind of get the right parameters going. And again, I think it was programmed that way. But there are other universes that, when they form up, perhaps they don't have the right physics involved, the right chemistry, they don't have the right nuclear forces, and they never get developed to go. The other ones, they spawn up and they burn out way too fast to really get much going, and it's another dead universe. But ours happen to have the right physical parameters and to be able to build, exist, spawn galaxies, solar systems, and you think about the trillions and trillions and trillions of galaxies and planets and everything that's out there. We happen to be right in the right spot. We were very fortunate. But same thing with actually building the universe out to begin with. So there's a physicality for the universe to begin with, but all of that again is within these different dimensions. And so us rising to another dimension. It would be interesting to see that. Do I believe that could happen? Sure. Physically, we could raise the entire planet, really the entire universe, into another dimension. What's interesting about that, however, is that would take everybody out of time. So it'd be how that would work and how everybody would react to being outside the scope of time.
Right.
I don't know. We could speculate on that one all day.
Right. Well, one thing that and I love Dolores, by the way. I could sit and listen to her all day, and she's already went off this game and probably on to the next. So she's left our planet, but I'm left.
She has even more answers now.
Oh, I know. That's when I remember Betty White. She said, "My mother always said, oh, now they know the secret." When somebody would die, Betty White's mother would always say, "Now they know the secret." And I always thought, that's one way to look forward to our last breath and going on to the next one. But well, you travel the world a lot. I mean, you get to go see a lot of different ancient sites, and but you talk about clues that ancient ancestors have left us. Could you talk about a few of those? I mean, we touched on a little bit, but can you? I mean, it's not just Egypt. There's a lot of different places around the world that kind of left clues for us.
There are, and I do resort to Egypt a lot.
Right. No, it's most of us do.
I mean, like you look in the what we call the Egyptian Book of the Dead, which is really the book of going forth by day, the papyrus of Ani specifically, because there are a lot of different books of the dead, and they're each a piece of it. But the papyrus of Ani is one of the largest, and it's the most beautiful one that's out there. And throughout this text, Ani is deceased, and he's kind of going through the process of moving on to the next world. Well, he's having a conversation with one of the netters, one of the gods, Atum, and he's asking about the nature of the universe, how old it is. And Atum describes it as millions of years upon millions and millions of years, and basically he describes a layering of time and then a recycling of that time. And what's fascinating about the idea of recycling, and we see this a lot in our ancient symbolism, specifically with the Ouroboros. Now, again, we can date the Ouroboros, its origins, all the way back to ancient Egypt. The oldest incarnation that we know of, at least so far, is on the burial shrine of King Tutankhamun. There's actually two on it. There's one over around his head, and there's actually one around his feet and ankles on this shrine. But probably the best known is the illustration by Theodoros Pelikanos, which dates to the 1400s. And it's the one that, to me, the head always kind of looks kind of fox-like, but it is a serpent. And it has feet on the inside track. It has fins on the head. And this is, the snake eating its own tail. But it also has two different colors, red and green. And then there's all kinds of text surrounding it. And this was actually not his own creation. It was his hand that drew this, but it was a copy that he was basically kind of preserving old alchemical tracks. And so he copied this from an older illustration that dated all the way to the time of Synesius, who was a alchemist back in the late 300 ADs, early 400s. And he's one of the, he was a student of Hypatia. We're going all the way back to Alexandria here. And that's fascinating to me because this is a piece that would have survived the destruction of the Great Library of Alexandria. And they basically used the Serapeum there for a while. It's kind of like a daughter library of the Great Library. And so when the Great Library is lost, you just had what was at the Serapeum. So this survived that. And again, this symbol is the idea of the recycling, renewal of life, but not just our lives, but also the life of the universe. And you see within it, like the two colors you see duality, idea of as above, so below, the Hermetic principle here.
Right.
And I relate this, bizarrely enough, to some things that have been discovered here in modern times, which is down in Antarctica over the last few years here. They've been doing tests with it's the Ice Cube Project and the Anita Project. And they're doing tests and running observations on neutrinos. And what they had discovered were these neutrinos were acting in a very bizarre manner. And you're supposed to be measuring them, coming from space and interacting with our planet. But they were finding these coming up out of the Earth's core down at the South Pole. What in the world's going on here? So they're running these tests and running their calculations and everything. And what the scientists have said, and this is a peer-reviewed paper that came out in a journal earlier this year, that there is a parallel universe running in reverse time.
Wow.
So I hear this and, my mind starts to wander here. Oh, we're talking about, time running in reverse. What would that sort of thing look like? And it struck me to basically put that into this Ouroboros, by that Theodoros Pelikanos had drawn up. You had, again, the two tracks, the two different colors. And I believe it's representative of, one tract is running in one direction of time. The other tract is running in the opposite direction of time. And where they meet, the end is the beginning is the end. That's the Big Bang. And again, recycle. So what was before the universe? The universe. What comes after the universe? The universe. Because it's a constant cycle, again and again and again.
And there's the...
Yep, there it is. There it is.
Wow. Yeah, that's... I've never been to Egypt. That's one reason I would love to be able to go over and just take my time and really look at some of these hieroglyphs and just enjoy, these past discoveries. I just... and
you should come along with us one of these times.
I would love to. That's my goal, is to go on a tour, and I think that'd be great to go with you guys. That would be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, even if the guy that you want to go with, he's my guide when we do these. That's Mohammed Ibrahim. So even if you don't come along on mine, which I'd love for you to come along on mine,
right,
make sure it's with Mohammed.
So tell us, what is he like?
He is... so he is a Egyptologist, and he's been running the tours down there for over 20 years. A guy that knows everybody. So, we'll be at a site. Like this last time we were at Abydos, and there's back room. I hadn't been in it before. And he's like, Mike, have you been back here before? No. He goes over to these, guys that, have the keys. And he's like, hey, can you let us over here? And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure.
Wow.
And so we go back into this room, never been in before. There's all these different hieroglyphs and everything. And he proceeds to tell us, the Seti, which is the woman that from England that when she was
I interviewed
an
author of a book about her. It was amazing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're familiar.
Yeah.
Well, this apparently was her room at Abydos, where she did all kinds of research, helped them rebuild the temple, all that. This is the room that was like her favorite and where she slept when she'd stay over there.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah. And it's not open to the public, but we were able to get in there because Muhammad knows a guy.
It's all about who you know. It's all about who you know.
Yeah. But he's very, very learned, very, very knowledgeable.
Mohammed is
guy
what you
is running their Ancient Civilizations event here was it a week and a half from now or whenever it is, and he's one of the speakers there.
Oh my
He's
God.
the guy to go with.
Well, his name one more time?
Mohammed Ibrahim.
Ibrahim. All right. We'll have to check him out.
And
all
our
right.
tour is next April 17th to the 28th. And it's Stargates of Ancient Egypt.
Oh my God, that would be awesome.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, before we get out of here, I do have this question, and I'm sure a lot of people would love to know if it's not even available yet, which many people think that it is, but time travel, is the possibilities of us really traveling through time. How close are we, or do you think maybe we've already discovered this and and just not out to the public yet?
I think we're already doing it in some capacities, kind of like what I alluded to earlier, as far as like some of the time slips that we experience,
Right.
or when we have premonition and things like this. I think those are kind of lighter forms of time travel. I don't think time travel is going to be a DeLorean and a flux capacitor. I think it's going to have more to do with us. And your physicists will say, well, if you get near a black hole, time warps and works differently. We're not getting next to a black hole anytime soon. Okay, that's just. And even if you did, it would probably rip you apart. You'd go through spaghettification, stretch you out, and then you'd be gone.
You'll be in your body will be in your body pieces will be in many different times.
Right, there you go. But I believe it has more to do with the consciousness, being able to, and again, alluding back to somewhere in time. I think the writer Richard Matheson was onto something there with that whole concept of being able to will your consciousness back to another point in time. And in that story, he basically convinces himself he's in 1912. Right, he clears out the room, of any modern amenities, dresses himself in the time period, and all that sort of thing, and convinces himself. And I think that's a part of it, but I think it's tuning your own personal resonance, frequency, and vibration to that other point in time, so that you can actually, and as you would practice, it's basically a meditative experience. And as you would practice something like this, maybe you'll start seeing glimpses kind of fade in and out. I think at some point, if you were to practice enough and train yourself enough, then you could actually experience a point in time, another point in time, to some extent. When I was a kid, I actually tried, and that's kind of where I start off the book, is telling the story of when I was a kid, and I'd moved, from where I'd been in Massachusetts to where I ended up in Ohio. I was missing my friends, was familiar with the movie, and so I had actually tried laying down one night in bed about a year later after the move to go back in time so I could go see and visit my friends one last time. And I had actually put myself into a very meditative state, and got to the point of I was feeling like this undulating current, like waves. And then I started to feel this electric tingle, and that spooked me. I was a kid. I was like 14 years old, and I snapped out of it. Talking to a lot of people following that, they're saying, well, you're about to have an out-of-body experience. You're about to project somewhere. But I do wonder to this day, okay, yeah, fine, I was about to go OBE, project, but because my intention was set to go to another point in time, would I have gone back in time? And again, I think that we can train ourselves to do it with our consciousness, not a machine.
And I think, people that have this psychic ability, everybody has the ability for, psychic abilities, but some people are just more enhanced with their gift. And so I do believe that they do have some sort of time travel, of course, to see, predict futures and stuff like that. So,
yeah, absolutely. You'd be able to see that they are tapping into getting a glimpse of another point in time.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, Mike, once again, you brought the book, the knowledge, everything that you've put your research into, and where can people find your book?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can go to my website, MikeRicksecker.com. Also, my learning portal, ConnectedUniversePortal.com. The book is listed on both those sites, but of course, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any online retailer, or brick and mortar if they've ordered it and decided to stock it. Or you can even go in and ask them to order it for you. So, pretty much anywhere.
Well, we thank you again for doing everything you do and being a part of Truth Be Told again. And hopefully next year we'll see you at the season 2 of Parapod, and we appreciate you doing what you do.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sean. Yeah, Parapod, I'd love to be a part of that. And I appreciate all the work that you do, too. So thank you very much, my friend.
You got it. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in and being a part of Truth Be Told every week and supporting us on our journey of bringing you content that hopefully enhances you and enlightens a better world around us. And so we hope you support Robert on Monday with Minutemen Report, Bonnie Burkett doing Truth Be Told Transformation, of course, Metaphor doing our Espanol Truth Be Told, and of course me every Friday right here. And until next time, we'll see you soon. Take care of yourselves. This has been another episode of Truth Be Told. Thank you so much for watching. Recorded live at UBN Go Studios in Burbank, California. Join us on social media. Facebook, Truth Be Told Radio. Instagram, Truth Be Told Paranormal. Go to Truth Be Told Worldwide for more information on upcoming shows.